Okay, George, are you listening?
Yes, Sally. Look, a great attendance tonight. I'm George Shaw, Chairman of the Organising Authority. This is a very special seminar tonight. We're going to be discussing some very important things for the race. But before we start, I'd just like to give a welcome to a couple of I've noticed on the attendees tonight. Patricia Zotti, who is calling in from Japan. Patricia is the interpreter for Nita-san, the owner of Kehoe. And also, I see Alan Paris is on the list. I'm not sure whether Alan is jumped off his bike riding through France, is in Bermuda or Queenstown. You just never know where Alan is calling him from. So welcome all. And firstly, I'm going to introduce to you Brent Stafford. Brent is the supervisor of major events on behalf of the Australian Border Force, and will tell us all about the things we need to know, either leaving Australia or coming into Australia. Brent has had 3 years with the Australian Border Force, and before that, he had 11 years in the Navy. So over to you, Brent.
Thank you very much. I also have my colleagues from Melbourne as well with me today, Craig Moffat and Natasha. They will be more around the SME side of stuff for the leaving of all of the vessels out of Melbourne.
Okay, so you'd like to take control? Thanks, Brent.
Not a problem. So on this slide, you can see this is what we'll be covering tonight. Should be hopefully relatively quick so we can get to the questions for everybody. Clearance personnel on arrival to Australia. So first things first, we need to make sure that everybody on board holds a valid visa and passport. You are also to notify the Department of Home Affairs before arrival. So that is the link just there. Let us know you're coming. What I will do, I will send through all of the links to Sally, and she'll be able to disseminate them to everybody else so that you're actually able to click on the links, make sure that you have the most up-to-date information available to you on the ABF website. And from there, you'll be able to follow the bouncing ball, essentially. Thirdly, display the international placard Q flag and travel directly to the appointed boarding station. You will need to complete a small arrivals report form and incoming passenger card. The incoming passenger card is the card that you can see on the screens at the moment. Please note this card is a legal declaration and regarding your identity, health, and any items in your possession. Providing a false information on your IPC can affect the visa status and ensure your IPC is completed accurately. Arrival and berthing. So when you arrive into Australia, stay on board. No persons other than biosecurity and border force officers are allowed to board your craft, nor can any person, animal, or article leave the craft until you've been given full clearance. Depending on your arrival time, you may be required to stay on board overnight before clearing the following day. Do not throw any waste or foodstuffs overboard while you're in Australian waters or while you are moored. Use designated biosecurity disposal points. Please keep all your food animals secure on your craft as it has been inspected until it has been inspected by biosecurity officers, and do not trade foodstuffs with overseas vessels. So these are some more links. Like I said, I will provide these to Sally later on. So what can you bring into Australia? We do have it on the ABF website where you can actually have a look and everything like that. Australian Border Force officers have the legislative power to conduct bag examinations and question travellers to identify breaches of certain customs, quarantine and Commonwealth legislation, including import and export of prohibited goods. We encourage all personnel to be aware of what they can and cannot bring into Australia. So personnel who exceed Australia's duty-free allowance will be charged duty on all items of that type: general goods, alcohol, tobacco, not just items that exceed the limit. So if you have more than what you're allowed, everything will be subject to duties and taxes. So as you can see, these are some of what you can take in and out of the country. So prohibited items, there is multitude of other things on the ABF website, but these are just a few. Medical supplies. Office of Drug Control, Department of Health and Aged Care is responsible for permit issuing agency. An import and export permit may be required for certain substances of medication. So if you are looking to be bringing something in for a medical condition or anything like that, you just need to follow what is written there. Medical supplies will be permitted under the following conditions. A list is to be prepared in English of medicines and medical devices intending to be brought into the country. The list should include the medicines, active ingredients and their strengths. You must maintain a record of medicines and their use while in Australia. The list must be produced if requested by an ABF officer when leaving the country. Medication cannot be used to treat anyone who is not a member of the visiting group, or unused medication must be removed from Australia at the conclusion of the activity. Once again, I will provide a link to Sally for this so that it's nice and easy to use and request if needed. Prohibited items, vapes, as most of the Australian contingent will be aware, there has been a massive crackdown on vapes. If you are bringing one into the country, it can only be for treatment use. You also will need a prescription from your doctor. It's nice and simple. Links, what you can bring in, duty-free, prohibited goods, and list of controlled substances. Reporting requirements. So we'll go through cargo, import, export reporting, and passenger reporting. If you're looking to bring something into the country that is of high value, and it's not just personal goods that will just fit on the ship or anything like that on your vessel, your yacht, engage a customs broker and engage early. There can be holdups at the border just due to operational priorities. So if you engage a customs broker, it will save you the heartache of trying to import something when a customs broker needs to be engaged for certain border related workings through such like integrated cargo system and stuff like that, the reporting and stuff of goods. Reporting to ABF, the master of the vessel must lodge this vessel pre-arrival report at least 96 hours before the arrival into Australia. If the journey to Australia is likely to take less than 96 hours, then use a table detailed in the Border Entry Guide, which I will provide. Actual arrival report. Upon arrival at the port, the operator of the vessel is required to submit an actual arrival report within 24 hours of the arrival. A customs broker and ground handler can help with these things when you are arriving as well. Sailing in Australian waters. For a control permit to be issued, the craft must be the following criteria. Craft must have arrived from overseas and will be scheduled to depart for overseas. Craft must have arrived under its own power and not as cargo. Craft must be transiting Australia for non-commercial purposes, i.e. not engaged in commercial carriage of cargo or passengers. Craft must not be employed for any other activities of commercial nature, e.g. charter, hire or leasing. Craft or parts of the craft must not be offered for sale, sold, or otherwise disposed of. Temporary imports. Certain goods may be temporarily imported into Australia for a period of up to 12 months. Noting that most of you will be in and out of the country, I'm going to guess within a few weeks. I don't see you too much worry about the 12-month period, but the nature of the goods, what they will be used for while in Australia and who is importing them will determine on whether the goods will qualify. A surety or security may be required for these temporary importations. The surety or security may be monetary in nature and can include bank guarantee, written undertaking, and some are monetaries. The money, once the goods have been re-exported, the money will be returned essentially. Temporary import of vessels. If your visa allows you to reside in Australia for a limited period, you may be required to temporarily import your craft into Australia. Temporary imports without paying customs duties are subject to the vessel being exported within 12 months of arrival, which I imagine everyone will do, fingers crossed. A security in cash or appropriate will be of equal, will be otherwise payable. Once again, security will be returned on export. This is just roughly customs broker. If you're planning to use one, it just makes things a lot easier to get them into the country. Requirements, ABF's information. For this event, ABF will work with the event organizer to ensure your information requirements are met. ABF will need visibility of the number of personnel arriving at any given port, their means of arrival when they're arriving, understanding what types and quantity of goods or cargo they are bringing. This information allows ABF to ensure we have adequate resources available to provide immigration and customs clearance. If you do not share the required information, this can result in delays in processing personnel into the country. So these are some more forms and everything like that. More than happy to send through to Sally once again. So leaving Australia. Passenger movement charge. You may be required to pay passenger movement charge on departure. This charge is $60 per person. Anyone under 12 is exempt. Australian Border Force clearance is required before you depart. This will be available at a appointed port. You should contact the ABF in advance to avoid unnecessary delay. We will be talking to Sally about and nailing down where everyone will be departing the country from, and Craig and his team will further engage with Sally about that, timings and everything, to make sure that it's all done. Valid travel documents for all personnel on board. When Australian small craft departs Australia for places overseas, the vessel is exported and export declaration is recommended. You should lodge an export declaration and present the export declaration number or an EDN to the ABF before requesting ABF clearance. Foreign-owned vessels do not need to be exported. So essentially, for anyone that's Australian and you're heading over to Japan, you should be lodging an export declaration, and then requesting clearance once you have that declaration number, and then showing it to the ABF when you leave. So key takeaways. Engage a customs broker or agent if you're importing any goods. Assess what permits you may be required. Apply for the permits required. It can take a little while, just depending on what kind of permits you're looking for. Understand your reporting requirements and complete these requirements in a timely manner. If you have any questions, please do not leave them to the last minute. Reach out to Sally and her team, and Sally will reach out to myself and my team, and I will reach out to Craig, and we will get an answer back to you as soon as possible. And there we are. Any questions?
So Brent, I have a question from Annette.
Yep.
Hesselman's. Her yacht that she will be competing in is in commercial survey, and she wants to know, does she need to suspend her commercial survey to sail offshore?
Craig, do you have anything on that one? I'm not the SME on sailing and everything like that. So hopefully Craig will be able to help.
Thanks, Brent. Sorry, could you just repeat the question?
Yes, Craig.
Yeah.
And one of the Annette is a competitor. Her
Yeah.
yacht is a commercial survey, and
Yeah.
she's asking, does she need to suspend the commercial survey to sail offshore? I'm assuming she's meaning as a non-commercial vessel for, border force and other requirements.
Yeah, I would advise if you could send that question through to me, and I'll get my team to answer that. And we just might get a bit more information about the vessel itself. I'm happy to provide our. Yeah, I can pass on our email, and I'll get that answered for. I'll probably have to answer that tonight. Sorry.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
fine. So Annette's just typing a little question. She thinks it might be a question from AMSA, but what I'll do is I'll copy you both in on an email and her address.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. I've had a question that I think we'll take offline, and I'll sort out. Alan Paris is wondering how long his boat can stay in Japan before he ships it to the US, but I've got some ideas about that, and I'm sure it's not in your realm of things to ask. Robert Bradley is asking, do export declarations apply to Australian registered ships as well?
Yeah. Hi, Robert. Thanks for your question. Yeah, it's highly advisable that if it's an Australian registered vessel, it is exported, and you get an export declaration number that you provide it to ABF. The reason being is so obviously they're high value items. So if you export it, obviously there's no export duties or taxes you have to pay on our end. But if you get that notice, you've exported your high value item, that when you return, you re-import it. Again, no duty or taxes will apply, but then it's you avoid any complications of getting the vessel valued or any queries about the value of a vessel coming into Australia. If it's been exported, there's a record. Coming back in, there's a record that's going to marry up. I hope that answers the question. Yeah.
Okay, does anybody else out there in the audience have questions for Border Force, either Craig or Brent? If you could just pop them in the chat. If you can't think of your questions now, but they come to you later, if you could forward them to the admin@melbourneosaka.com address, and I can forward them on for you and get a reply. We've just had another question come in. How are exported drugs treated, required for Cat 1 and on return? So by that, the race, Brent and Craig, is a Category 1 race, which requires them to carry what are termed medical poisons, for want of a better term. And Saskia wants to know, how are these drugs treated on export and treated on return, or controlled drugs?
Yeah, it's Craig again from Melbourne. On your departure from Melbourne, you'll get a small craft departure form. You'll be able to put any controlled drugs on that form when you leave, and similar when you come back to Australia, you'll just report on the small craft arrival form any controlled drugs on that form. To us, we understand that you need to carry these with you. In terms of what destination you're going to, Japan, I can't answer any of their requirements from their end.
Okay, I think we know that from the
Yeah.
Japanese end, when boats arrive and are cleared by customs, that their medical kit with contained drugs is taken from them and returned when they clear customs to make their journey home. So we've had some discussions about this previously, and it's useful for competitors to have those drugs in a locked box, well marked and named, for handing over to Japanese customs, and also to keep a list of what's been given to them, and suitable also to put it in their log on their yacht. Another question, if you departed Australia at the start in Melbourne, but need to come back in to repairs in Australian waters, do you need to come into a custom port or a port of entry where you could be cleared back into the country?
Yeah, hopefully that doesn't happen to any of the participants. But yeah, look, we understand that weather events or difficulties or sometimes repairs need to happen. Ideally, when you depart Melbourne, you just have a smooth sailing and you head all the way there. But we understand things change. So if you do need to come in, all we ask is you just keep in communication with us. Everyone who departs should be provided with email addresses or phone numbers that if things change, we just ask you to notify us and where you need to go in. If you need to seek shelter or you do need to get repairs, that's okay. In most scenarios, yeah, you'll be able to just continue on after your repairs and continue your race. Very rarely, we may need ADF officers to come and see you again, or you may be advised to come into another port to be seen. But yeah, if you just work with us and notify us, we will want to assist you as much as we can.
Okay, so I think that's all we've got in the question line at the moment, but we'll be in touch with you via email if we need your further help.
Yeah,
I'll
sure.
hand back to George.
Thanks, Brent and Craig. That was very informative. Look, entrants, could you just be a little bit patient with us about the end of the race at this stage? As you know, we're building a temporary marina at the expo site, and the intention is that the temporary marina will stay in place for at least a month after the race finishes. So there's free accommodation there. But please don't ask me about the ablution blocks. We're still working on that facility, but hopefully in the next month or so, we'll have some more information. Our next presenter is Luke Brandley, and I'm really looking forward to hearing Luke based on his personal experience. Luke's a senior search and rescue mission coordinator for AMSA, and he has coordinated hundreds of operations in the search and rescue. It's very interesting to see that he was involved in the search for MH370. And Luke has served as an Army aviation officer and a helicopter pilot for 13 years before joining AMSA. So over to you, Luke.
Luke, would you like to take control? Thank you.
Yes, got that there. Thank you, George, and hi to everyone out there. So as said, yep, I work in the Joint Rescue Coordination Centre. Just to come back, Annette, your question probably is best directed to AMSA, but unfortunately it's not my specialty. So yeah, if that can go through Sally, and yeah, the areas of certification within AMSA, we'll be able to answer that for you. I'm going to cover tonight a little bit about JRCC Australia, EPIRBs and PLBs, some of the aviation assets that may be used, helicopter transfer procedure, and then medical assistance plan for the race. The Joint Rescue Coordination Centre is an internationally recognised organisation. It's the combined aviation and maritime search and rescue centres within Australia. All federal search and rescue in Australia is conducted from Canberra, from our office. We're there 24/7, 365 days a year. And within the AMSA Response Centre, though, we also look after maritime assistance services, domain awareness, and maritime safety information. Our responsibilities reach from civil registered aircraft through to sport aircraft, anything that's registered for flight within Australia. We also cover manned space vehicles on their return. We look at SOLAS and offshore shipping. We provide medical assistance at sea via telemedical services and also conduct medical evacuations when they're needed. Our office receives and responds to distress beacon activations. Distress beacons covers ELTs fitted to aircraft, EPIRBs fitted to vessels, and PLBs that are used either personally or for hiking and four-wheel driving events. The world is divided up into search and rescue regions, and the Australian search and rescue region is about 52.8 million square kilometres, a fairly significant size of the Earth's surface. Simply, it covers halfway to Africa, halfway to Indonesia, halfway to New Zealand, and then all the way down to the South Pole. Within that, we obviously cover quite a few different climate regions and different areas of both ocean and land. When you're using your beacon, make sure you attach it either to yourself, your life raft, or the vessel if it's not the vessel sinking. If it's in the life raft, you can keep it inside, but try to keep it vertical just so that it gives off the best signal possible. And learn about your equipment, where it's stored, how it activates, whether it's manual or a water switch, so that in the event of an emergency, you know where it is and how to activate it. If it's a PLB, attach it to the upper part of your body so that it is clear of the water and with the antenna pointing vertically. And make sure it's connected to yourself so that you don't get separated from it. It's no use us picking up a PLB and leaving you in the water. When you do activate it, it should either emit a beeping signal, it should have a strobe light or an LED that flashes just to show you that it has been activated. And in that, there'll be a local 1215 signal that aircraft can pick up, but there'll also be a satellite burst that goes up to the COSPAS SARSAT system, and that's relayed back to us in Canberra. With that activation, we'll be able to check the registration details, find out who the beacon belongs to, and then if we identify that it's from one of the Melbourne to Osaka yachts, we'll get in contact with race officials and initially try to confirm the safety of the vessel or find out what the nature of distress is. If we're unable to do that via VHF comms or phone, then we'll launch a response and we'll come to your aid. Some of the assets that we have available to us. AMSA has 4 Challenger jets on contract to us, operated out of 3 bases. We've got one in Melbourne, one in Cairns, and one over in Perth. We also have the ability to reach out to civil EMS helicopters and other SAR helicopters that are operated around Australia. If we need to, we can also call on other civil aircraft and helicopters just on a charter arrangement and use them for both search and rescue where they have that capability. And if we get to the end of that and we still don't have the right capabilities, we do have the ability to reach out and grab ADF and other government aircraft to use. For a helicopter transfer, make sure you listen out on channel 16 for it. That'll be the safety frequency. Turn the volume up because obviously once the helicopter gets overhead, it is going to get noisy. There's going to be quite a bit of turbulence and salt spray. If you are able to steer into the weather, and if you are not underway, then obviously a drogue off the front of the bow will help to keep the yacht into the sea. Turn your radar to standby and don't use HF communications whilst the helicopter's overhead. It says here, be ready to launch a life raft. Obviously, listen to the directions of the helicopter, but because of the mast and rigging, it may be easier if you actually drift behind the boat in a life raft and get recovered from there. The medical assistance plan, your initial steps, contact the race committee and they can make an assessment as to what needs to happen from there. Serious illness and injury, obviously if it comes through to JRCC, we have a telemedical advice service where we have contracted clinicians they'll be able to make an assessment over the radio or over the phone on what needs to occur. And that may be that we're able to fly medical supplies out to you to sustain you, or it may be that we organise to have you recovered from the yacht. If it's serious and you do have coverage or a sat phone, you can call the JRCC directly, or you can make a call to 000. And I'll put the phone number for JRCC Direct into the chat on completion of the brief. And any questions?
Okay, so if anybody out there has a question, if they'd like to pop in the chat now, that would be good. Most informative, thank you. Perhaps they've all got the drill down pat, because I don't have any questions coming through. But I guess if people think of things after this presentation, then we'll be in touch with RCC for some advice. Thanks, Luke. And thank you also for the direct phone number for the Joint Rescue Coordination Centre. Here, I've got one question has come in. Will a beacon transmit to AMSA in international waters, for example, the Solomon Islands?
Yeah, so the way the system works is that any Australian beacon anywhere in the world will get a notification in Canberra, even if it's been activated outside of Australian waters. If we've got an international beacon, we'll be notified if it's in Australian waters, but if it's outside of our waters and an international beacon, we won't get advised of that.
Okay, so I don't think we have any other questions for you at this stage. I don't think we've got any other questions for you at this stage, Luke, but thank you. I'll just hand over to George.
Thank you, and best of luck to everyone for the race.
Look, just before you go, this may be something you may or may not be prepared to answer, but do you know when the Manus Island base is going to be re-established? I know it's been announced, but this is going to be very, very comforting for those doing the race if that base is re-established before the race starts.
No, so unfortunately, I can't help you with that one. That's outside my area.
Yeah, I have been talking to both the US Navy and the US Coast Guard. They can't give a commitment yet, but here's hoping. Thanks very much, Luke. That was very informative, and I'm surprised no one asked you about the rescue that you arranged during the week.
That's all right. I'm happy to talk about it if anyone is interested. There's just a question there about medical emergencies in the North Pacific.
Yeah.
There is, if you are unable to get, if you're unable to establish comms with local agencies, then if you come back through us, we'll be able to get you the right contacts in those areas if it is needed.
Thank you. And so just another question on the beacons. A New Zealand registered beacon would be handled by New Zealand Maritime?
So the way that it works is that there's two parts to it. The first is where the beacon's located. So if the beacon's within Australia's search and rescue region, then it'll be notified through to us in Canberra. However, if it's a New Zealand coded beacon, so bought and registered in New Zealand, then they will also be notified of it. Once they're notified of it, what will happen is New Zealand RCC, MRCC Wellington, and JRCC Australia will establish contact with each other, and any registered details in the New Zealand database will be passed over to us, and Australia will handle the response. If the beacon is outside of Australia's waters, a New Zealand beacon would go to MRCC Wellington, and the same process would happen where they would liaise with the SRR the search and rescue region that the beacon's active in.
Okay, and Luke, one of our race management team from the Ocean Racing Club Victoria is just asking if you could perhaps give a brief mention of the recent search and rescue of the yacht off the New South Wales coast this week.
Of course. So on Monday, we received a detection of an EPIRB that was registered to Mates for Mates, which we later found out was the Spirit of Mateship. It's a Volvo 60 yacht that was tracking up the east coast of Australia. It was about 87 nautical miles east of Sydney, or east of Nowra, and in pretty horrible weather. So we tasked Chopper 26, which is based at Nowra, and Rescue 204, based out of Bankstown. The two helicopters headed out there to meet up with the yacht and find out what was happening. At the same time, we were also able to, through a broadcast to shipping, confirm a car carrying boat, the Rio Nevada, and HMAS Arunta were both in the area. So those two vessels started tracking for the location as well. The HMAS Arunta got on scene, the two helicopters got on scene, and basically due to the weather conditions, this was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I think, by the time they got there. They didn't have the ability to conduct the rescue before nightfall. So HMAS Arunta, HMAS Canberra, who also made it out there, and the car carrier remained on scene overnight to provide some weather shielding and eyes on the yacht overnight. And then in the morning, overnight, we also had a Defence C-130 that went out there and remained overhead. Through all those assets, we were able to establish that there were two people on board, there was no medical issues, and that apart from being losing steering and being dead in the water, there were no medical issues or anything that required immediate extraction. So we were able to keep them comfortable overnight with people on scene with eyes on. And then once first light came, the police vessel Nemesis was able to get on scene and in fairly rough conditions still launched their recovery boat and was able to take the two people across between the yacht and the Nemesis on a fast recovery boat. So they're, I believe, arriving in Sydney very shortly after a long trip back in on the Nemesis.
Okay, so thank you. That's most interesting to hear. And there's a couple of comments for you, Luke, that it's amazing to think of the people and the resources and the dedication that's available when things hit the fan. Also, did the yacht sink?
The last report that I got was that it was taking water at the point where they got brought off. So I'm not sure if they hold it or if it was deterioration of the situation.
Okay. All right, so I think that's all we've got. But once again, if you have questions for AMSA, if you send them to the admin@melbourneosaka.com email, and we'll be able to forward them and help you. George, would you like to take over? Give Luke a thank you.
Once again, Luke, thanks very much. We very much appreciate the support AMSA provide. A very big comfort to those in the race, but we hope we don't see you at any time soon. Thanks, yeah. Thanks again, and thanks again to Brent for his presentation. Sally, I think you've got something now to carry on with.
I have. I have, George. So in the absence of what is now known as the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry, I'm going to give you some information that we've shared by email. Unfortunately, they were unable to attend tonight, but I have been in touch with them and will continue to do so and liaise with them and yourselves as entrants. So DAFF is the Australian Government Department which is responsible for biosecurity risks to Australia. And so therefore their importance for the entrants is that you need to report your intention to enter Australian territory as it's a legal requirement. So the following information will be useful for boats arriving into Australia before the race and also yachts returning to Australia after the race. This screenshot is taken from the DAFF website, and it just actually shows the measures that you need to take if you're thinking about arriving in Australia, how you contact them, what date you'll be arriving, where you'll be arriving, meeting with a biosecurity officer to be cleared to come into Australia. They'll also give you documentation to say that you've arrived, and also help with any waste that you have aboard your boat, and any other questions that you may have. I'll arrange to have these links put on the website, and also when we post the video of this session on the website, we'll let you know, so you can go down that path. It's worthwhile that you read them carefully and click on the links. There's lots of useful questions and answer sections regarding biosecurity inspection, fatigue, managing your waste, vessels with timber components, and more. So there's a document that's actually called Starting on the Right Tack on the website. It's a biosecurity checklist for non-commercial vessels, arrival into Australian territory. It's a quick reference guide, and it's supported with lots of extra links and information. And there's also a good video that takes you through the procedure. So some of the information on that biosecurity checklist includes a link to the non-commercial vessel webpage, which is what the entrants are considered, non-commercial vessels, and a lot of information about biosecurity issues. It also is linked to the pre-arrival report, which can be submitted electronically for your impending arrival, and that needs to be anywhere from 90 days out to 12 hours prior to your arrival. It will also have a list of questions about your boat, what you might be carrying, your crew members aboard, where your vessel's been travelling, previous ports that you will have entered. The other important link on this document is a first point of entry. So that is where you can arrive in Australia. Melbourne is not a first point of entry. And as George has mentioned, I think most of the boats coming from Japan will enter Australia at Bundaberg, which is a first point of entry, and clear customs there before making their way down the coast. But just keep that in mind for boats returning home after the race. You need to be at a first point of entry, and there's a list of those on that link. And as we all know, nothing comes free these days. So there are fees and charges associated with biosecurity inspections when you arrive or return to Australia. Just another thing I wanted to raise is that yachts is the need to have a ship sanitation certificate. These were previously, I think back about 2007, known as a de-ratting certificate, and they are required for your entry into Japan. So we know from previous experience that the yachts arriving from Japan will already carry these certificates. To obtain this certificate, it requires an inspection service of the vessel by DAFF personnel. who will then provide a biosecurity status document or a ship sanitation certificate. And there's also a fee for this service. Previously, the organising authority has helped facilitate these inspections, and we're currently making inquiries about the process, and we'll update you as the information comes to hand. So the experience from 2018 was that the personnel came down to Sandringham and other locations where boats were, and they carried out these inspections on the same day to try and make it a little bit easier for them. So we're working towards doing that as well. So I'm just going back through the questions. So for the follow-up for timber inspection, does that apply to the structural aspect of a yacht? It applies to anything timber that's a structural aspect or in a part of the interior of the boat, Cyrus, and there's a lot more information on the website, a lot more of information on the links on the website in relation to that question. So when biosecurity officers come, they'll be inspecting the panels and the lockers and anything else that may be of timber. We've got a lot of timber there. I think Neville's answered some of these questions, but certainly we will share with you the links so that you can have a look for the information yourself. So I don't work for DAFF. I've had the experience of working with these organisations for the last 2 Osaka races. So I can certainly, if you've got further questions, if I can't answer them tonight, I can forward them to the appropriate people to get some information for you. So apart from Cyrus and his timber interior, has anyone else got anything that they would like to ask?
Oh, it's George, Sally.
Yes, George.
Just on the timber, perhaps I could relate my own personal experience. After the last Vanuatu race, my boat is an American boat with American oak interior. After we cleared, I think it was in, I think it might have been Bundaberg, we've cleared in several different ports. They were most intrigued with the American oak interior, and they wanted to know when I was going to slip the boat again. And when I slipped at Sandringham, they keep on changing their names, but it's a DAFF now. They came and inspected the boat after I slipped it in Sandringham, which just because I had an American oak interior.
Okay, so another comment about timber in your hulls is that you'll find when you do the pre-arrival report that they will ask for documentation if on the journey home you've had to do any modifications or refits in another country. They will want the information of where and when, for the same reason that any timber from overseas could carry pests or mites, be biosecurity risks. So that is also spelled out on one of the forms for you. Okay, so I think that's, I don't see any other questions forthcoming. Although,
Okay,
as I said,
George, Sally, you don't get away that easy. I think we all need to give Sally a bit of a clap because she stood in for both Grant and Delma, who are enjoying themselves somewhere in Europe. So a big thanks to Sally. And also a reminder that if I haven't spoken to you personally, I will be over the next little while. I really have enjoyed the last couple of weeks contacting so many of you. and sharing your stories. What I'm planning to do is hopefully every week to put one of your stories up to share with everyone else. Everyone has an exciting story about the event and their preparations, and I think you deserve to share it with the other entrants. So all the best, and keep your stories coming.
Okay, can I just thank Neville Rose from the RCV, who's been a great technical support for me over the past week and also helping tonight. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Neville.
And perhaps I hope you all noticed Cyrus. You've all seen the lovely photo of Cyrus presenting his dad with his Ronstand watch. And we still have watches, commemorative watches for sale. So if you've got someone you need a special gift for, just get on the email and we'll be able to help you out. I think that's all from me. Okay, Cyrus's dad's super chuffed. So if you want to be like Cyrus's dad and have your friends happy, the Ronstand commemorative watches are a great memento to have. So I don't know that there's more chat happening, but we will see you all next month when we will have some presenters talking about provisioning and clean oceans. And also, if there's any questions that you have about previous sessions or anything more that you would like us to be able to assist you with in terms of these presentations, please pop them in the chat or email us. Thank you.